From sadistic sandwiches to burning buildings, prepare yourself for some more sordidly sumptuous schadenfreude as we take a look at even more extreme stories of revenge that went too far. A secret snip. Reddit user A Quiet Borderline posted a diabolical story shared with them by their late friend, who we'll call Nina. Nina was an only child with two loving parents, but they'd had such a difficult pregnancy that her dad had chosen to get a vasectomy after she was born. For a time, everything was great. And then when Nina was in college, her mom was diagnosed with extremely aggressive ovarian cancer. You'd think her husband would be as supportive as he could, right? About that. While her mom slowly decayed in a hospital bed, her dad started an affair with a coworker, one that was only a few years older than Nina. Ew. We'll call her Stacy. Stacy began grafting herself into Nina's family like a parasite, staying at the house, shopping for them, and even sitting with Nina's mom at the hospital. Then after Nina's mom tragically passed away, Stacy moved into the house. Nina knew that her dad had been cheating, and that Stacy had been a lying, two-faced rat to her mother in her last days. Understandably, she was furious, but rather than confront them, she hatched a devilish plan. See, Stacy was desperate to have kids one day and had spoken about it numerous times. Because of this, Nina realized her dad couldn't have told her about the vasectomy, and as the years rolled on, it became clear he had no intention to. So, Nina played the long game. She pretended to be happy when Stacy and Dad announced their engagement, acted like a true friend to Stacy, and didn't say a word about her dad's snip for decades. But when she eventually got married and had kids of her own, she noticed the pained look on Stacy's face and couldn't help but smile. Then, during one of their girl days, Nina found her moment. Stacy was distraught, confiding in Nina how much she'd always wanted children, but no matter how hard they'd tried, it never happened. Now she was entering menopause, so her chance was gone forever. Nina sat there straight-faced and said, "What, Dad didn't tell you?" Then proceeded to reveal to her the devastating secret she'd kept concealed for her whole life: her dad's vasectomy. The fallout was beyond explosive. Stacy was distraught, angry, and broken, and immediately filed for divorce. Nina had no sympathy. This woman had integrated herself into her dying mom's life as she was being intimate with her husband. She cut both her and her furious father out of her life and never looked back. Cockroach chaos. I'm a tough guy, but I do have one weakness: bugs. So this next submission from a viewer I'll call Billy made me pee my pants. Billy was a student at the time, and school was organizing a classroom sleepover. The day of the sleepover, he turned up with his pal Kev, who'd brought along a special teddy bear that meant a lot to him. Only thing was, someone else had their eye on the teddy. A bully I'll call Grunkle waited for everyone to leave the classroom before slithering over, picking up the beloved bear, and ripping it in two. Naturally, Kev was distraught. Sure, he could buy a new one, but it wouldn't be the same. Following the heartbreaking incident, the teacher checked the CCTV footage and learned the sorry truth. Shamed, Grunkle was suspended for 3 days. All's well that ends well, right? Wrong. See, over those 3 days, Kev's parents got angry. Really angry. More needed to be done. So, before school one day, they beckoned their son over and gave him some very specific instructions. He was to place a plastic container inside Grunkle's locker. But not just any old container. One filled with cockroaches. Nervous but excited, Kev took the container and planted it where his parents had told him to. Later that day, when the bully noticed the strange container, curiosity got the better of him and he cracked it open, only to be utterly covered in an army of cockroaches. With a blood-curdling scream, he ran from the room. Poor old Kev was suspended for a month, but Billy reckons it was worth it. And I have to agree with him. Great Halls of Fire. Sometimes revenge isn't the answer. I know. But if your target is a deranged psycho, things can escalate quickly. A viewer named Jessica found this out the hard way back in 2022. She'd just bought her first home, a lovely little cottage, and invited her childhood friend Angie over. The pair reminisced about their childhood and remembered their old bully, Harper. Harper had made their lives hell, and they'd always dreamed of enacting sweet revenge on her. Well, there and then, they decided to make good on that dream. Electing to keep their payback small so they didn't start a war, they snuck over to Harper's house, toilet papered her roof, and placed some creepy gnomes in her garden. Ha, a reasonable amount of payback for a childhood bully, right? Well, apparently Harper didn't think so. That night, Jessica was awoken by a loud knock at her door. Half asleep and afraid, she got up with a broom in one hand, her cell in the other, and opened the door to find nothing. Slowly, she stepped outside to investigate but couldn't see anything. Then the uneasy silence was broken by the piercing sound of her smoke alarm. Jessica sprinted back inside to find no other than Harper stood there with a box of matches and a can of gasoline. She must have snuck in after Jessica left the house. Instinctively, Jessica grabbed Harper and sprinted outside just before her cottage exploded into flames. Jeez, that's what I call psycho behavior. Just a shame it was the bad guy that came out on top. If you love the sweet smell of revenge, why not treat yourself to our brand new revenge poster? See what forms of potent payback you can spot around Vengeance Village, with more than 70 of our best true stories. From poop deliveries to bug-filled bags, they're all here. Heck, you can even get a few ideas yourself. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to the description and click on our store. Or scan the QR code on screen right now to grab one. Now, back to more epic revenge. Slot machine mayhem. Gambling is addictive, destructive, and can cause irrevocable damage to your bank account. So it's only natural to feel a little salty after losing, right? Well, in Italy in 2013, a man named Nura Bregu headed to a bar to try his luck on the slot machines. He lost, then lost again, then lost a whole lot more. Before he realized it, he had no cash left. In fact, bystanders heard him muttering that he'd lost a crippling $5,500 in the last 2 weeks. Holy cow. Blinded with rage, Nura stormed out of the bar. The other patrons carried on with their day as normal, but then unexpectedly, Nura returned. And this time, he was brandishing a friggin' axe. Enraged, the man leapt into a frenzy, smashing and slashing his way through 7 different slot machines, like some kind of gambler berserker. Then, his lust for revenge satiated, he clambered over the wreckage of his foes, gave a thumbs up, and waited calmly out front for the cops to arrive. What a king. As far as I'm concerned, those slots had it coming. Sandwich Slayer. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Don't mess with a man's lunch. A viewer that we'll call Gareth wrote in to tell me a story of lunchtime evil that'll make your skin crawl. And if you've got a tale of revenge you'd like to share, send me an email at revenge@beamazed.com and you could make it into the next video, just like our boy Gareth. See, every day, Gareth would bring a homemade sandwich to school, and every day, a bully, who we'll call Bob, would yank the sandwich out of the guy's hands, eat it in front of him, and laugh. Sacrilege. Well, one day, something snapped inside Gareth. It was one stolen Sammy too far. That night, when making his sandwich, he made some little adjustments. Gone were the tomatoes, the lettuce, and the cheese. In their place was a brand new, the secret ingredient that Bob was sure to love. The next day, lunchtime rolled around, and sure enough, there was Bob, lumbering over like some hideous sandwich goblin. But he wasn't going to get away with it this time. As usual, the bully snatched the sandwich from our hero's hands and, without looking at it, took a big old bite. With a smug grin on his face, he chomped and chewed until he tasted something decidedly not delicious. Blood. Suddenly realizing his mouth was in agony, Bob spat out the sandwich and opened wide to inspect what he'd just eaten. His mouth was filled with sharp thumbtacks. Big Bob was rushed to the ER, and although he suffered no lasting injuries, he learned a valuable lesson. Don't mess with Gareth. And I hope this goes without saying, y'all, but while Gareth's revenge here may taste sweet, don't go feeding anybody tacks, or anything else sharp for that matter. It's an incredibly dangerous thing to do, and could cause serious injury, if not death. Billboard Blues. Cheaters are the lowest of the low. Anybody that'd be unfaithful to a partner deserves everything they get. Just ask Michelle, the friend of a viewer. Michelle was head over heels for her husband Mike, and the pair had been perfectly happy for 8 magical years. At least, that's what Michelle thought. One day, she returned home from work to find a very pregnant woman eating chips on her couch. What? Mike explained that the woman was named Jessica. She was pregnant with his child, and they decided to be together. As if that wasn't terrible enough, the two had also decided that it was best if they live there, in the home Michelle shared with Mike, while she should go back to her mom's house. Distraught and defeated, our girl packed her bags, left the house, and drove to her mother's. But the shock and sadness quickly subsided and was replaced by a white-hot rage that consumed her entire being. How dare she treat her like that? They'd been together 8 years, and that was how it ends? No, not that easily. So the next day, she got to work on a plot that would destroy their newfound bliss. First things first, she ran to the bank to freeze the joint account she shared with Mike. Then, while the adulterous pair were out, she hired a locksmith to change all the locks on the house. At the same time, she had movers grab all her belongings right down to the toilet paper. Then it was time for the final step. Michelle sent out dozens of invitations to a surprise party at the house the next day to celebrate Mike's new life. And to make sure the party got the attention it deserved, she also took out a huge billboard on the front lawn. Yes, you heard that right. It scathingly read, "Congratulations on leaving me for your pregnant lover, Mike. I hope the baby doesn't inherit your infidelity. Burn." Then she went back to her mom's place and waited. The next night, Mike called right on cue. He screamed, demanding to know what was going on. Why were there so many people outside the house? What's with the incriminating billboard? Why can't he open the front door? With a smirk a mile wide, Michelle calmly explained that the house is actually in her name, so she can do whatever she wants with it. Then, just as they'd done to her, she recommended the unfaithful pair go and stay with Jessica's mother instead, and promptly put the house up for sale, leaving them with nothing. But if you thought that was the end, think again. She even went so far as to hire someone dressed as a pregnant woman to deliver the divorce papers.
Stop! He's already dead.
So let's get this straight. Mike had no home and barely any money now that he couldn't access their joint account. But at least he still had Jessica, right? Well, in one final twist to the tale, Michelle received a phone call from her. Sobbing, she apologized for her actions, lamenting that Mike had no means of supporting her now, and she still had a baby on the way. It wasn't looking good for their newfound relationship. Michelle simply informed her that the circus is always looking for new members and hung up, utterly savage. Extra tenants. A longtime viewer of the channel called Salman is a landlord and started to rent out his property to a young man we'll call Derek. Derek seemed like an upstanding young bachelor, so Salman initially felt good about the arrangement. However, it quickly became apparent that he was actually a total nightmare. He drank and smoked heavily and would smash all the glass bottles on the floor and leave cigarette butts everywhere. As well as the immediate mess, the walls became stained and the whole place fell into disarray. On top of this, he routinely claimed he didn't have enough money for rent and refused to pay on time. Right. And I suppose all those bottles of booze and packs of ciggies were charitable donations then. As the months dragged on and nothing changed, Salman knew he had to do something. So our landlord lad had a devilish idea. One thing he knew for certain about the terrible tenant was that he was deathly afraid of rodents. With this in mind, our guy took a trip to a local pet store and picked up around 24 mice. Then he informed his tenant that he'd be heading into the property to fix some water pipes. In reality, the only thing he'd be fixing was Derek's attitude. Salman hid mice all over the place, then got out of there and waited for the fireworks. Sure enough, he had a call from Derek the next day. Between the high-pitched shrieking, Salman deciphered that his tenant was demanding he do something about the rat infestation. With a chuckle, our man replied he couldn't get rid of the rats because Derek was one himself, so it wouldn't be fair. Following this, Salman made Derek hand over his keys and he fled the place, never to return. And Salman may not have gotten the rent he was owed, but I'm sure those panicked yelps helped lessen the blow. Ant agonized. Oh boy, an even worse story about lunch thieves getting what they deserve? Coming right up. Back in 6th grade, a viewer named Dojitha had a bully who, say it with me, stole his lunch every day. Well, one day after getting home from school, our fella decided to make a very special sandwich for him to steal. See, his brother kept an ant farm. Surely he wouldn't miss a few, right? So, Dojitha grabbed some of the creepy crawlies and dumped them into his usual sandwich before wrapping the whole thing in saran wrap and putting it in his lunchbox. The next day, the obvious happened. Bully boy snagged the sandwich, tore open the saran wrap, and chowed down on the stolen snack. At first, he cackled in Dojitha's face, but his expression quickly changed when his tongue started to go numb. Yep, the ants. They were crawling all over his tongue and inside his mouth, viciously biting every bit of flesh they could in a horrific, painful dance. Bursting into tears, he sprinted out of the room. Fantastic. Sweet dreams. I'm sure you've seen those memes about falling asleep first at the sleepover, right? Well, a viewer named Lee experienced it in real life. You see, when he was 14, he became fast friends with a boy named Zach. The duo was inseparable. And one night, Lee invited Zach over for a sleepover. They had a great time, laughing, playing games, and eating snacks until they eventually settled down to sleep. Lee nodded off quickly, tuckered out from an amazing day. But when he woke up, something felt off. Then, with horror, he realized his head was stuck to his pillow. Turns out, while he was sleeping, Zach had chewed what seemed to be an entire pack of bubble gum and covered his hair in it. Now, Lee had long hair, so all that gum was incredibly painful to try and get out. Yet his house guest only leapt up and started cackling with laughter, shouting, "Gotcha!" But Lee didn't see the funny side. His hair was in such an awful state that it needed to be entirely shaved. Clearly, Zach had different ideas about what was and wasn't reasonable friend behavior. So around a week later, when he asked to come over for a second sleepover, Lee was eager to give him a taste of his own medicine. Like before, the two had a grand old evening before going into bed. This time, Lee waited for Zach to fall asleep before sneaking outside into the neighbor's yard, who he knew owned 2 big dogs. And then he saw what he was looking for, an absolute ton of gross, stinking dog dookie. He carefully slipped it into a bag, then quietly ran back home and placed the stinky treasure on Zach's pillow, just in time to watch him roll over into it. The forbidden chocolate pudding went everywhere. His hair, his face, inside his mouth. As soon as that happened, Lee's poopy pal shot upright with an ear-splitting scream. I can only imagine the horror that was going through his mind. Zach rushed into the bathroom to clean the sloppy excrement from his face and mouth, then called his dad to pick him up. Safe to say the friendship was officially over. Not that Lee cared. Fishy behavior. I always keep my promises. You never know what consequences there could be otherwise. Just ask this next guy. Over in Indonesia, TikToker Mia Zahira had been badgering her husband for the longest time to clean his damn fish tank. See, if he didn't do it, she'd be forced to. Despite promising countless times, though, he never bothered to follow through with it. Day after day, he ignored her, and day after day, her resentment grew. Until one day, she just had enough. If he wasn't going to clean out his own fish tank, he clearly didn't care about keeping the fish. It was time to act. One evening, Mia served her husband dinner as always, only this time, it came with a twist. Just as he was about to tuck in, he noticed the fried fish on his plate was identical to one of the ones he owned. He gasped. Surely it wasn't. But yes, it was. As well as doing the dirty deed in the first place, Mia had documented the whole cooking process on her TikTok account, showing off her brutal revenge to the world. And if this wasn't bad enough, the fish was an arowana, a species that can cost up to $300,000. Jeez, that's one expensive dinner. I can't help but feel like there were other ways of going about this than burning hundreds of thousands of dollars and killing a living being, but hey, it'd be far more boring. 50-50. Trust me, divorce isn't easy. When the law gets involved, it makes a heartbreaking situation even more difficult. I mean, how the heck are you supposed to divide all your stuff up? Well, if you're anything like a German YouTube user Martin, the answer is excessively. In 2015, he uploaded a video to the site entitled "For Laura," thanking her for 12 years together and sarcastically wishing his successor luck. The implication is that Laura cheated on him. Ouch. The rest of the video consists of Martin sawing all of the possessions he shared with Laura perfectly in half. not the TV. What did it ever do to him? Naturally, a video as crazy as this took the web by storm. Heck, a guy saws the family car in half and folks are gonna take notice. But I'm afraid this tale of post-matrial mayhem isn't all that it seems. Sadly, this is a job for Buzzkill Man. You see, the whole thing was actually a promotional campaign for a German law firm. It was just a way of poking fun at a real issue, divorce, and promoting their service as a more civilized solution. Well, that's something, but it doesn't change the fact that an innocent TV was sacrificed for this ad. Rest in peace, my friend. Bug bombardment. Oh my, another story of lunch thievery? That's right, but I've saved the best for last. A viewer named Raphael told me about a school bully he encountered when he was just 6 years old. This bully, called Jacob, wouldn't just steal his lunches, he'd plunder his favorite toys too. But when Raphael's then 16-year-old cousin found out what he'd been dealing with, he had a devious plan for payback. Big Cuz bought a jumbo-sized one of those surprise eggs that are usually filled with toys and candy, then went to the local pet shop and instead filled it with spiders, beetles, and all manner of other creepy crawlies. Then he gave it to Raphael to bring to school with him. Sure enough, the next day, Jacob immediately noticed the egg and tore it from Raphael's hands, expecting to find goodies inside. On opening it, however, he was met with unspeakable crawling horror. The bully screamed and recoiled, but the wildest part, perhaps in some kind of misguided attempt to get Raphael in trouble, he snapped the egg shut and brought it home to show his parents. You can see where this is going. In a genius move, our boisterous bully opened the egg and all those horrible insects burst forth from it. Dad apparently soiled himself, Mom jumped out of the window, and a whole house had to be quarantined while pest exterminators got rid of the insects. For 3 whole weeks, Jacob was out of school, and when he finally returned, he never stole anything from Raphael again. Man, that revenge must have really bugged him. Poor doggy. Animal abuse is one of the lowest acts imaginable. So, when Redditor Balloon Knot Bandit stumbled across a thin, injured, flea-ridden dog shaking in the street, he was overcome with worry. Was it a stray? What the heck had happened to this little guy? Well, he didn't have to wait long to find out. The door of a nearby house opened, and an old man stepped out, calling to the dog. It was his. He demanded that it come back inside, but Bandit stood in the way and refused. He could only imagine how much abuse the poor thing had suffered. After an intense screaming match, Bandit picked up the poorly pup and raced home, where he fed and bathed it. He called it Sally, and from the way she ate her food, it was clear she was ravenous. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. The next day, he called animal control. After assessing the situation, they heartbreakingly had to put her down. She was just too far gone. Bandit was devastated and furious. He needed to make sure that old man suffered for what he did to that poor animal, and he had just the idea. See, the man's house was on the same route he routinely walked his own dog. To begin with, he printed out flyers explaining exactly what the guy had done to poor Sally and put them all in the neighbors' mailboxes. Then the fun began. Twice a day, Bandit would walk his dog, bag up its poop, and throw it directly onto the old guy's roof. This went on so long that the man eventually lost the will to try to remove it all. For a whole year, Bandit made his life hell, coating his roof in an ever-building mountain of stinky dog dew. It was glorious. Eventually, Bandit had to move, but to this day, he still heads back every few months to top up the doo-doo peak. Rest in peace, Sally. At least your honor went thoroughly avenged. Craving some sweet revenge? Grab your poster now and bring Vengeance Village home. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code. On that note, I think I've had as much revenge as I can take for one day. Which of these did you find the most insane? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.